Roro namatis didi jabadu Garam abba faana duuti du'anoo lanii.
Thank you, Dr. Asfa, for this presenting me. I'm very happy to be here with you. I'm very, very pleased to be here and, of course, to see many of you, old friends and new faces, and, of course, to see Professor from Lagasa, for whom I have tremendous respect, who has a profound impact on the research we are doing. So I recognize his contribution in my PhD dissertation. I continue to recognize, of course, his contribution, his impact on our research in my current book. So thank you for coming. Thank you for seeing me. I would like to thank also Dr. Ibrahim for generally encouraging me to come here and to participate in this, as well as his really effort to bring these wonderful people from back home and to connect with us. This is really remarkable. I had to go really far place to see such great people. So wonderful. Thank you for doing this. I also thank, of course, I'm very happy to be with my friends, historians. That means History Department of History in North America. Of course, you have also our senior historian who sits here, Professor Muhammad Hassan, who is also a great friend. So my presentation will be devoted to land. You know, I'm the son of a peasant. As a son of who? Are you son of peasants? Many of you are, I'm sure, I don't doubt. So I grew up really having the concern of the land, being in RC, born in 28th Osa, the most fertile land in Ethiopia, the most alienated land in Ethiopia. I grew up seeing the land being taken away from the people. I'm not talking about military. I'm talking about in my lifetime under what you call mechanization. That is the topic I'm writing on, mechanization, development and displacement. That's of course the topic we are discussing today. So when I was a boy, I heard a song which many people are now singing. That song is called Masan Gamala Fambatu. You know who sang that song? It is not Hachalu. Now he made it popular. It was sung by Oromo Chisanya, by Tulama Chisanya. His name, I heard from a certain person called Galashi of the Chisanya. By the way, the Shuan Oromo is the most victimized of all Oromos because victimization started with him under Silas Selassie. And of course, many of them also displaced to come to Arsiya. If you know some of them, 30% of the Gulande who were displaced from Filipine came to Arsiya Chisanyas. Follow me? And so he was singing, Masallama, Masangamala Fambatu, Talba Facha Fatatati, Tokodu'e, Tokonyatu, Walgagala Fatatati. He was singing. And our displeasure, our discontent with land. Land was the key issue, as we say in RC, Lafti Lafedudadi. Lafti Lafedudadi. That is your backbone. When you lose your land, you lose everything. You see, this is simply what made me to write about the book for 30 years, about this topic for 30 years. And of course, my thesis is very simple. My thesis is, of course, the thesis of the book also, Ethiopia was an empire, and continued to be an empire dominated by two hegemonic groups. So the Amara dominated Ethiopian state since the middle of 19th century, and of course now the current government appears, no matter the name you give, dominated by one group. There are in political science which say that in Africa there is no hegemonic ruling class. They are wrong. There is a hegemonic ruling class in Ethiopia for more than 150 years. So the topic I'll be discussing is simply, so I will pass to the next slide. I don't know if you can help me with the slide. So my argument is therefore land grabbing is not new. It is very old. I start my discussion with this quote coming from southern people, which may include Oromos, because this is simply the most important issue, which creates insecurity for many people and for generations to come. These people simply claim they have something and continue to sell their land. So this is simply the concern of Oromo people and other people, of course, with the land grabbing. So let me go back to my thesis. Yeah, okay. So my argument is simply land grabbing is not new. So there are different types of land grabbing. Imperial land grabbing. So I call it land grabbing because they were colonizers. When they came from different regions, they went to the south, they were given an advice, Faras in the Gatta. Faras in the Gatta means you take whatever the force can take you. That means no limit. So these people came in large numbers, they didn't even need time to measure. It is called Ainagamat. Just look at the land and simply take what you need. And then later, after 40 or 30 years, land was to be measured. From the Oromo, it was said, turf marit. The Oromo had to lose more lands, but these people, of course, who took Ainagamat, kept all land. Some of them ended up with tens of thousands of gashas. I quote in my book, Rasbiru, who had 22 gashas of land in Harar. Not including Garci. So therefore, land grabbing, of course, very old. It was started with feudal colonizers, of course, and then, of course, now I'm using the term giveaway of the land under the current regime. So I think many people may make a case or against for a host of reasons. So this is also what we call land grabbing. The same groups, ruling groups, of course, after changing, people keep losing their land. So that's really the most important thing. So now, as you know, there was a rush for land owning during Melik's period, and now there is also a rush to buy land. And of course, this land generally given to sometimes to party loyals. I read a document where the government assigned 90,000 hectares of land to party members. 90,000 of land belonging to communities and to people because they are party members. In the same way, Menelik awarded land for the service for the loyalty to the state. So that means history repeats itself in Ethiopia because governors try to allocate resources to these people. And so, as I mentioned earlier, therefore, land grabbing is the same in both places because it is dominated by two groups. Because and I'm not accusing by the way Amharas, I'm accusing the system which simply presided over by Menelik in Paris. So I will show you how that happened. So, when I discussed about this, therefore, the Ethiopian conquest, is that the second? So, the conquest of 19th century, therefore, created two Ethiopias. One is called Ethiopia of Ristanyas, where they respected the right of those communities who are land. This is called Rist. In Tigrinya, I think Risti. So they respected the right of these Amhara Tigrian communities, and they simply took free hand to give the land to other people. They never cared about who owned the land. They didn't know, or they didn't really care about what land looked like, but they decided. So you had the Ethiopia of Ristanyas, where Menelik, Haile Selassie, carefully respected the inherent rights of Amhara Tigrian population, where they took freedom to allocate resources everywhere, because the land belongs to Janhoy, the king, and because he was simply free to give the land. So that's the Ethiopia of Chisanyas, and the Ethiopia of Chisanya is not Gabbar. Sometimes, of course, there is a difference between Chisanya and the Gabbar. Gabbar is someone who has some land and who gives services. Chisanya is the tenant who can be really evicted any time because there is no right. So there are differences. So now, under the system, therefore, you see the imperial conquest, of course, creating 1,000 people as the victim of the Ethiopian state expansionism. Now, what I would like to simply tell you is simply I have original songs for you, which came from Bali, a very fascinating one about Naftanya Gabbar relationship, because the conquest created what we call a paradise on earth for Amhara Mokonent class, and of course misery for the Oromo people. So the two songs are very remarkable. One was said to have been composed by the first Naftanya commander called the Jazmach Asfaw Darge. The Dajjal was Fadarge, because he was the son of the Agni, he himself an Agni, he was appointed governor of Bali. So he looked at the beauty of Bali and said this in Amharic. I think I didn't forget Amharic. Agarachin Bali Gannat Yemit Masili, Yefitu Siballa, Yuhala Sidasili, Yefitu Siballa bis. You know, without even eating the last harvest, now the other is on the corner, which simply means they never had this kind of land. So that is simply the way. So in the meantime, Oromo Gabbar naturally if they ate simply that way, the Oromo were hungry. Sometimes they're eating their stomach to fill them because they were always had food. Those people who worked for them didn't. So this was simply captured by a song, of course, from Gabbar. This Gabbar identifies the name in Bale. Some of you who know come from Bale know it. Shafila. Shafila, his name was simply Jabbo Guye. Jabbo Guye was simply a Gabbar who worked for Naftanya until he got about 80. He stopped working because there is no age of retirement. He was asked to leave the service. And now his son also became a Gabbar because Gabbar is inherited. As someone said earlier, injustice is inherited. The father was a Gabbar and the son. The son simply couldn't support his father working at this age for the Naftanyas. This person died. As the Oromo custom then, many people came to mourn him. And so he said, now stop crying. So it's up to me to say something. He said, stop. So he said, my father didn't die. He got freedom. So this is the word. He said, it's moving Kashela Ubafate, Gaddafi Burafate, Ajaja Hobbafate, Gadanu Tamabute, Abia Bagadute. You see, which simply means you don't want your father go. But he is saying, instead of seeing the Naftanyas coming and ordering to work for them, he simply wanted his father, because when he says, Ajaja Hobbafate, no one can come and bother you at home while simply you are tired. So this simply contrasts the song of Asfal with this one. So that is the reality that Ethiopian empire, Ethiopian land grabbing did. So that really, I have many others because I don't have time to share with you. So, okay. For land grabbing, of course, I may not have time to do the modern one because my slides are really many. So I can simply look to different kings. Let me go back here. One of the remarkable aspects, many people didn't know that Iyasu was really very sympathetic to the Oromo cause. And I reported, of course, I will write an article on this, how the RC in Bale and, of course, in RC did revolted to support him, because no one knows what he was supposed to do, was trying to do, but many people simply wanted to have him. But he himself turned out to be the other in Amhara-dominated society, so he was found Muslim, and of course Oromo, then he got rid of. Then, of course, you have the Italian period, which is really fascinating. Many Ethiopian historians, politicians do not talk about this. Many people are talking about Haile Selassie went to Geneva, London, to appeal against invasion of Italians, the fascists raping his country. But guess what? What he didn't know that his people were not free. So the Italians, the fascists came to abolish the Gabbar system. So Haile Selassie, the fascists, imagine, he was simply proclaiming his country was free, now it was colonized, but the Italians found, of course, energy, for their own reasons, of course, to really abolish the Gabbar system of invasion. Not only that, the Amhara, the Naftanya, they never say thank you. They didn't learn how to say thank you. Because when you serve, it is your duty. And they never paid you. So at least Italians introduced to pay some money. In RC they say, Tola Franjit Bande say. Yeah, that means before that you are asked to free. If you work, that means you are working. But then the Italians paid a small amount of money. And that is also one thing. The second thing is also, which is funny, also when the Naftanyas came, they looked around the fat animals and picked it. Does the Italians pay? They say 50% of what the words of the at least you are paid, isn't it? So this really is the difference. The Naftanya claims the land, what you do, and then of course they didn't pay. So what the people told me, the Italians were paying basically 50% of the worth of the property. So which is simply is a significant one, which is really the beginning. So in the country, therefore they say Tola Faranjit Bande say Tolin Juru. So I may go to Haile Selassie, so I have to simply add this one also, Haile Selassie. One of the things about Haile Selassie was a funny thing, perhaps one of the original things I have in my book. Haile Selassie, after returning to Ethiopia, then what he wanted to do is to get more lands. Most of the lands were given to other Mokhanites because his legitimacy was shaky, and in order to get more land, therefore he had to find ways. The only way he found was simply to become Balabad in many regions. In my book, you see Haile Selassie appointed himself as a Balabad. The reason means that the land was taken from the Balabad, and then he became the Balabad in order to get. That is the funny theoretically. Imagine Haile Selassie buying 28 gashas of land. And the guy was told, you sold the land. The guy said, I didn't really know that I sold the land. Finally, this Buyogino had to take 20 years to bring his case to Emperor Haile Selassie. Guess what? Now, you see the typical Amharic proverb, which simply says, Abbatu Danya, what? Liju Kamanya. Not only that now, this is another one. Abbatu Kamanya, Abbatu Danya, Abbatu Kamanya. Because he was the judge. He was the judge, and he was also, you know, that is simply the kind of land grabbing I'm talking about. Unfortunately, I would love to talk about the Derg period, and of course how the Derg period was, of course, especially the first 4 or 5 years was more favorable. The only best time the Oromo had favorable relation with the Ethiopian state was between 1975 and 1980. And then, of course, that was really the best time I remember, because I was old enough, I was in high school, and of course the only time where people were felt free and had positive attitude towards Ethiopian state was between 1975 and 1981. And then, of course, 1980s was hell, as you know, for ideological reasons. For this government, of course, I would have loved to talk about this, because my slide is really about 25. I think my friend is simply waiting for me, so but I'll stop here, and maybe taking, if you have some question, for probably answering in Oromifa language, which you are comfortable. Thank you for listening to me.
I will not do that.
Yeah, wanni gabaabsee dubbachuu barbaade wanni biraa wanni jiru mootummaa nama dhufe kuni itti fixa waan fixatinsa haga waggaa kudhanii oduu samarii haga waggaa kudhanii akka nama uummataa fi ta'uu barbaadaa fakkaataa ture haga waggaa akkanuma hojjetu gudda 2000 deebi'anii raawwataniiti waa lama ideolojiin isaa jijjiirame. Ideolojiin jechuun amma ni liberaalii taana jedhanii warri alaatis siin jiraa irratti ka'e. Kan jechuun ka amma waggaa innis yoo dhufe san poolisii dargiidhaan dhiisaa ture. Namni amma dibeetii kana jiru as Profeesar Mararaa fa'aa jiru dibeetii ture Itoophiyaa keessatti bara 1935 fa'aatti land rights and public ownership kan jedhaniif government ownership. Gaafa dasan immoo mootummaan uummata qotee bulaa hiyyeessa kanaaf waan dhaabatu fakkaate. Amma kaa waggaa kudhaniiti waa hedduu jijjiiramee tokkoffaa mootummaan kunis humna ifaa hin jabeeffate jechuun amma lafa kana yoo gurgurii wanni biraa bakka risoorsiin biraa jiru. Lammata immoo fuutnoonni kiraayisiin ekonomii dhufnaan warri baankinis akkana godhaa jedheeni warri immoo kaa'u birrii baay'ee qabu warri peetroololaa qabu kaa'u arabni warri chaayinaa kun biratachuu barbaade. Kana waan ta'eef amma kun land grab dhufee ani waan argumentiin jedhu barbaade land grab has nothing to do with development. It is political. Itti miti kun nama tokkichaa waan benefitiin qabnee fi uummanni Oromoo bakka jiru maratti warri politikaa keessa jirus I'm not asking about waan politikaa dhageessaniiti miti. Laafta kan nama akka irraa muqqatu tokkichumaa ta'uu sirra jira. This is, you must be common denominator. So you must fight for the Oromo people, for sammata Oromooti fi politikaa keessanii miti. Politikaa keessatti akka uummanni buqqaan. Kuni politikaa miti. It is the survival of the nation. So lola kana ijoolleetti dhiisina. This is lolli kuni kan nama sababa mootooti. Uummanni kun lafa maree hin jiraatu. Kana waan ta'eef politikaa dhiiftanii waan lafaa kan akka nama irraa buqqifne. Guddinni nama buqqisa hin jiru. Anitti kaaf. Development jechuun kan jiru human development ta'uu irra jira. Social development ta'uu irra jira. Kun yoo guddinnis jiraate physical development jedhanii GDP'n akkas ta'ee GDP'n baga'ee 130 ga'ee eenyu GDP'n maa godhamu. So kana waan ta'eef uummanni waan duru hojjetu sanii hojjetee akka jiraatu waan jiru akka yoo jiraatanullee jiruun isaa akkuma suuta itti siqaa deemuuf akka godhamu malee akka wal taataniiti waan kana uummata sabaa hojii dhaabatanii isin gaafadhaa jechuu kiyya. Kana